Thanks for stopping by. This is welcome to the Brooklyn Rails Wednesday afternoon reading series. This is the 141st of these weekly readings, and also the 842nd episode of the renewable sociality environment. We have a great reading for you today. It's a reading and conversation with the Lazies, namely Lorraine Lupo and Paul Maziar. Lorraine will read first, and Paul will read, and I'll introduce them each. And then they're going to read some work together. And then we might chat for a few minutes, depending on time. Before I introduce Lorraine, let me just thank you again for being here. If you're not familiar with the series, then you might take a look at the chat as the reading goes on. There'll be links posted to various works and endeavors by both of the poets and some basic information on the Brooklyn Rail itself. I'm really happy to be able to introduce Lorraine Lupo, and also I should note that there are new books by both Lorraine and Paul, and that's part of the occasion for having them here. Lorraine is the author of The Unwanted Sounds from Cuneiform Press, by way of From Green Zone, and co-creator of Dust Exchange Slacks Books, and Guy, a fast-paced sad story, both collaborations with the artist and architect Max Jacobson. Her works appeared in the New England Review, 14 Hills, Across the Margin, and Art Practical, among others. She founded the now-defunct Gallery Lux and edits the periodic postcard series. As Slack Books, she occasionally publishes chapbooks. She's an active member of the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights and poet in residence at the Creative Growth Arts Center. In that capacity, she edited their first collections of poetry. The poem is Telling Me I Remember and Dear Volcano. Please welcome Lorraine to the Brooklyn Rail reading series.
Hi, everybody. This is my first Zoom reading maybe in a long time, so I'm just kind of getting the lay of the land, but it's just so nice to see so many faces, and also a lot of New Yorkers, and that makes me happy because I had to cancel my trip to New York to do in-person readings, so it's nice to see people showing up in spite of my cancellation. And I just wanted to thank the Brooklyn Rail and Selm Carolyn and everybody else who put this together and is hosting us, and thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm really excited to read with Paul, one of my favorite poets. And for a while, when I was first writing poetry, I used to joke he was my only reader. So it's always fun to read with him. So yeah, I'm going to be reading from my new book, The Unwanted Sounds from Cuneiform. And let's do it. So let's see, my first poem is going to be called By Way of. You know Carl, the guy 2 doors down? I'm going out with him tonight. I have mace. Here comes a sunburst. It means well, i.e. means nothing. One emotion masquerades as another. Who goes there? A vacuum. While you're out, pick up one of those pink thoughts. Sand so fine. A while will happen, or some softer equivalent. You'll know it by its faint sloughing. Marching is more cheerful, though I worry about your patriotism. Can you keep it up? I mean, I don't usually go in for ontological questions, but nobody's all there all the time. This next one, I feel like I'm kind of far away. Let's get closer. Next one is called Us. And the first line is a feeling I've been having for a while. Maybe you have too. Us. There are too many dogs in this town. What are they? They are one of us, formed by repetition, but unable to remember. What gives them the right to be watched so closely? Without information, it's all feeling, which isn't reassuring. They should fight, or we wouldn't know them. We insist that they wait like children who are never wondering, but always asking. Epiphany on the beach. I should say I had a period where I was writing a lot of sestinas, but I never know whether or not I should read them because I worry that people are going to be like, I'm tired of those words that you keep repeating. So anyway, we'll see how it goes. Epiphany on the beach. Are you tired of people? Step away and they become figures. Here begins our study in form, a collection of particulars abstracted to the intentional mark. One becoming many, becoming one. Try experiencing the street this way. One window may not delight all the people, but a row of windows makes the kind of mark the landscape asks for. The idea figures into the picture, abstracted to a predictable form. What's the most unrecognizable form your desire has taken? One day you found solace in sadness abstracted to a song which most people already know. That figures were not all that different. Mark, Sally, John, Mary, they mark time on the racing form. Their hopes are figures scribbled in the margins. Which one makes me like most people? Maybe it's how the present is abstracted unpleasantly into the past. With an abstracted gesture, the painter makes another mark. Is it too much to ask people to stay still? Her brush takes the form of an instruction no one heeds. With patience, she figures, someone might approach her figures not as themselves abstracted, not expressions of one truth, but something simple, like the mark the chair made on the wall, more form than notion, more enduring than you people. What happened to Tony last? When my friend wrote stories for children, they would ask her, what's Joey doing now? Evelyn Waugh wrote 2 endings for A Handful of Dust, so maybe the kids are right. They made a movie about that, actually, where Emma Thompson plays a chain-smoking novelist who can't bring herself to kill off the main character once he's walked through her door. He's agreed to die, though, in the service of art, which is either profound or awfully sentimental, depending on your point of view. I mean, I like the whole idea behind men dying miserably every day for lack of what is found in poetry, but please, is that just something we poets want to believe while our books are ignored and we get that blank look of almost terror on the face of the realtor at the friend's wedding when they've asked us what we do? I like art because it's not necessary. If it was, it would die instantly, like yesterday's newspaper, wherein you'll never read of anyone kicking the bucket from too much Dickens. Refuge. Our guide couldn't hear the birds. That's not a poison mushroom, she assured. Perhaps I was holding on too tightly. When I fell into the lake, I understood the lake. Without me, it's a simple thing. Now there were distances to be gauged. They got out their binoculars. Don't ignore the recognizable. Then what's left? The water repeats itself. The sun repeats itself innocently. We were guilty. Dead leaves strewn at our feet, and for no good reason. And was this the right amount? I mean, for the kind of magic we came here for? Nothing but our own foreheads for the beautiful light to bounce off. Then it's done. Pull out the flashlights, one by one. I don't like killing, I told the fruit flies. I want to be entertained. I call my customer service representative. He's actual for a couple of minutes. We believe the false bottom conclusion. Ninja cats versus dogs, who wins? Each unit is the same. With purchasing power, you escape the world. Is it true? Yes, I saw the edge one time, and it's not so bad. We gave it up for a memory of the sea. It's a metaphor and also a fact, but not a place for people with bath mats. I've got a right to your happiness. Oh, tastemaker, let it be a surprise which rake I step on. The future won't bother me. Hand it over to the authorities. Matte glam with more zeros and spiffy teeth. This one I dedicated to Norma Cole, whom I don't know very well, but she was so kind as to write and say she couldn't make it today. So I hope she can listen later. So Norma, if you're listening later in the future. This is called Only More for Norma Cole. I went to the museum today where I ran into the sonic boom lady, but as usual, didn't have anything to say. In the poetry wars, the winner got all the words, like take and arms can render harm or love. It's confusing. To reread Proust is probably stalling. The prodigy wears a t-shirt that says, practice. So fast, so far, more is more, but only more. I count the tiles in agreement with logic and destiny. I accept you, hurry up. Money is like that too, a kind of constant noise, totally unromantic. I meet my date in the corner and dislike him instantly, telling ourselves we were simple. My delusions are my taste is charming. I sit down beside my dog and she gets up and walks away. There's a lot of dogs in these poems. There's too many dogs in these poems. Okay. Let's see. The wife. A swan bit her on her honeymoon in the room where the orchids are kept when they're not blooming. The most foolish emancipation, like shopping in a dream. The clerk tried to warn me of the truth, but it was just some dress I bought. This next one, I got my title from my friend Tetra Balestri, who I believe might be here. So the title is The Rain Isn't So Bad Once You Get Wet, which I thought was rather clever. And I thought it would be funny. There's people write occasional poems for all kinds of occasions, you know, birthdays and all kinds of things. So I thought it would be funny to write her an occasional poem on the occasion of her divorce. The rain isn't so bad once you get wet. Don't you know why dogs are unhappy? More dogs, geez. Don't you know why dogs are unhappy? Should I stop talking about it? Are we quick studies? What kind of bed should you buy? Is paradise a cartoon island? Did you ever tell it in song? Have you ever been to Venice? How do I get there from here? Did you kill the houseplants? Have you stolen anything? Can I steal that? Does red look good on you? What about magical thinking? Are piles of leaves for jumping in? You promise? Man waiting for something. The man who built boats all day had a distrust of plot. The sea and its limited vocabulary would tell the same story. I've heard predictions come from above. As far as the sky is concerned, there is no love. Human and animal frequencies echo equally off the rocks. The boy throws a rock in the direction of the moving train. A similar futility is performed by the passengers as they count. The train and its limited vocabulary would tell the same story, and the left behind town is a destination when you leave. If you stay in the bar when the brawl breaks out, it won't be hearts on fire, but the usual Wednesday night windmill jousting. The thing that's beating you up is your intelligence. Dunking for the future, occasional mouthful of dismal sweetness, the only consolation. Street corner philosophers comfort themselves with theories of earned beauty, accessible like candlelight. You look so good waiting, so used to compromise. Sight temporary, call it yours if you can. This is called Sequence. The place I regret at the end of the flight of stairs, cool glass the bugs bump against. Comprehension is misleading. A tremendous flock overhead, mutual agreement, rolling periphery, and many a great mind blows with the curtains out the window. I've tried to talk myself out of nothing butness, overusing the stationary machine up the viewless path. What kind of hill do you need? A form of faith that can't be beat. It will make its own sense the way that trees do. By paying attention, a month passes. The hyacinths are up, toppling over from their own weight. Every creature has its private disaster, while you, raincoat over arm, hesitate at the brink of the broken escalator as if a greater phenomenon had stopped. One thing doesn't follow the next, according to the painting, living out its fate on the wall, piles of oranges set to fall. This one is called Herrick. The door placed at such an angle that no one can see in but any can enter is the most remarkable thing I went through that day. No one can see in but any can enter the buildings in my dreams. I went through that day like a sleep that hurried away every cloud. The buildings in my dreams moved from street to street, like a sleep that hurried away every cloud. I don't know how to read them. Moved from street to street, the sun waits on the people. I don't know how to read them, or is it the other way around? The sun waits on the people, appears fainter than, or is it the other way around? A grand gesture no one sees appears fainter than my memory of me, where a grand gesture no one sees still delights its maker. My memory of me, where the door placed at such an angle that still delights its maker, is the most remarkable thing. I don't know. I never know if I should announce the form before I read the poem that's written in a form or after. So I thought I'd trick everybody into listening to that. Pantoum. Okay, it's got really serious around here. So I'm going to end with this poem, Ne Plus Ultra, which I believe Paul gave me this title. We used to do this when we were we haven't done this in a while, Paul, where we give each other titles and that kind of spurs on, writing a poem. So Ne Plus Ultra. This is going to be the worst poem you've ever read. It smells like garbage. It isn't even ugly. Ugly is distinguished. This poem is a blob. It drools a stain on your silk shirt. It steals your thoughts. It makes you wince. It puts you to sleep, then wakes you up just as you were having a nice dream. Too bad the poem has nothing to say. It is lazy and stupid. It makes you want to punch the poet. But the poet is elsewhere, eating an expensive lunch and reading a better poem than the one you're reading. The poet chuckles with delight at an exceptional turn of phrase in the poem she's reading. It's original, so lovely. It leaves her grateful to have read it. But you're stuck with this poem. A sullen kid you have to babysit, a heavy shoe that's giving you a blister, a stupid phrase of music that you can't get out of your mind. Why won't it end and release you from its mediocrity? How about a nice image or metaphor, even platitude? No rhyme or clever structure, no confession or nugget of truth. The only tree in this poem is the one the poet fell asleep under after her lunch. What contempt she shows for you, poor reader, who likes to read poems. Such a person should be rewarded with a pat on the head or at least a word of thanks or an apology. After all, there are plenty of better things you could be doing than reading this poem. The plants need to be watered and the bills need to be paid. And isn't it just like this poem to remind you of all your obligations instead of allowing you the escape you were looking for? I told you this poem is bullshit. And frankly, I'm surprised you continue to read it. What kind of dope are you anyway, that you let a poem abuse you while the poet is eating an oatmeal cookie and laughing at you? Come on, put him up. You're pathetic. Defend yourself. Whoops, you lose. The poem is over. So, thanks. I'm gonna, by way of an introduction, Paul and I started doing this when we read together. We like to read a poem from each other's book that we like. So I'm gonna read something from Paul's new book, Quick Millions, that you will hear more from. But first from me, this one is called Works and Days. A description of the first section of town leads to, like almost everything else, a narrow in the way of a nest. A cheap analogy from newspaper columns, swimming, sects, voting booths, a procession of discrete, concrete events. The morning coffee is enough. Sorry, gosh, Paul, I'm butchering your lines. The morning coffee enough to mention the thing itself by circumlocution. Brains are, after all, in the feet, sinking coliseums and basilicas, doing the talking, cueing the laugh. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Lorraine. And I want to just mention that Kyle Schlesinger is here. Kyle is the publisher of Cuneiform Press, and posted in the chat that buy one, I'll just read it, buy one, get one free if you order Lorraine or Paul's book from Cuneiform Press today. Just mention that you were at the rail reading. So that's quick thinking, actually. It's a pleasure to have Paul here in the rooms. Paul, you've written for the rail in the past, haven't you?
Yep, a couple times.
Yeah. Paul Maziar is the author of Quick Millions, a full-length book of poems just out from Cuneiform Press, as well as 2 books of art writings, One Foot in the Other World and Flower Power. He's responsible for a handful of poetry chapbooks, including To the Air, a collaboration with artist Cynthia Lahti from Cooley Gallery, New Kind of Neighborhood, a collaboration with Sam Lohmann from Great Fainting Spells, and Little Advantages from Couch Press. He's the proprietor of Breather Editions and, alongside Aaron Simon, editor of Ergo Press. Please welcome Paul to the rail reading.
Thanks, Anselm. Also, thanks to all the rail folks who have helped organize this. I love that publication, and you guys all should subscribe. And like Lorraine was just now, how she closed, she read one of mine. I'm going to read one of my favorites from her book, The Unwanted Sounds, just out from Cuneiform Press. Get your copy. Lorraine, so you were talking about funny things happening in the poems, and you had someone stepping on a rake, and that has actually happened to me. I've also slipped on a banana peel, and I think that's in one of your poems. So this one's Klaus. I'm probably the only person to do this, I thought, scrubbing my rubber mallet. After a good thumping, I like to display it on my bookshelf, neon orange, a mini Klaus Oldenburg. Speaking of which, the other night I dreamt he was about to step on the scooping end of a giant shovel and hit himself on the head. Go left, I yelled, then woke up, which is lucky for him. One of my favorite poets, Lorraine Lupo. So I'll read from, I think I'll read only from my new book, Quick Millions. This is one of those situations in the first half of the book. I don't even remember having written some of this stuff. I think Ron Padgett has a manuscript or part of his collective that's called Poems I Guess I Wrote or something like that. Some of these kind of hit me that way. Bernard returns, coughing an intimation of Vesuvius, keeping himself amused. I saw this drummer so wobbly yet composed, jawbone connected to the bass bone, etc. This was in DC before they invented cigarettes. Train I ride. Blue as a bruise I once cursed, I ride in faster air, boarding the last car. Tough guy takes his muscles off. Hearing the spoken stories, I replace the bad images of fool's errand, trying to start a flood by crying, fiat lu in the conduit. Focus on sanity. Parting silk valences, the chef turns his brine rag into the astonishing bouquet. Worse crowds have been known to cheer in times like these. In his head, a glowing disc, bulging his eyes. At some point, no others will be allowed through these doors. The title of that one, and then one of the last lines comes from this Q&A response that I had with my friend, the poet James Urey. I wrote to him saying, "What is it to side with sanity?" And he wrote me back, "A fool's errand," which I thought was just perfect. Oral history. Yeah, Bobo was in the band. Can't remember what I did tomorrow. This is a poem in a few series stanzas. Live, you live to a kind of tune, like little musical screamings from city birds. Streamings, that's what you said. The records come from another time, out of their heads. The Iron Age has made this morning warm. Real power, I sun my limbs to strains. To say they're made up dates implies that some are not. I saw that bear driving his brown car up out of town, up stars, trying to dream effort. Head like a garden, add light eyes, not too early for silence. Games and news, take our phones away, or me to the other world. An impactful fish sailing through my mind, the world, the air. It's fine to question desire, not right, but working between constituents. The organ plays a rhythm I don't know. But as far as the song, it's granted. Off the cuff, guy ran from cop to cop in a comic I wish they had posterized. Slept for a time on my shoes, fear of pauperism, torn curtain. By way of the occult, you visualize and then can throw a man. More to do with duration than the number of rooms, a slow place where thoughts like wind aren't collected, they're just there, swinging screen doors. A place like that, or maybe a heron, or else a crane, given the concept of passage and space, the noun works and it moves after a long while being still. This poem is a cento, so it's made up of lines from other poets. Intermittent back turning is a measure of self-care. We all know one word doesn't mean anything, Kyle Schlesinger. And nobody cares how you hang your spaghetti wash on the pasta rooftops, Jack Kerouac. These conversations start and then engage the senses, only half meaning to. And then there is no choice. And then there is no sense, Elizabeth Bishop. I wish I could, but I can't prevent ideas for poems or anything else from blowing away, Charles North. Trying to time this thing, but I didn't start the timer. Goddamn. All right. Yes, machines. They made a blaze and set off. Fragrances opened the country. Whatever was behind was now, keeping the premise, being there a panacea for work. Maybe now you could take us around in one of your speeding yes machines? Gas it up. Yeah, we used to pass around titles to each other, me and Lorraine and our friend Aaron Simon, who's also a poet. And as a kind of joke or as a, he was trying to one up me, I guess, he sent me the poem titled Balls Deep and said that I had to write it had to be a good poem. I don't know if that's the case here, but it ended up being in this book, and it's dedicated to John Godfrey, which was also suggested by Aaron Simon. So this one's for you, John Godfrey. Thank you. This world is all pieces, passages of seasons flattened, a big wind in mind, chasing life to you. Birds up the coast making fools of the sculptures. They're never seen as positive or negative. Double cloud up there, the velvets, over pine at any rate. We'll bottle them. Balls deep the iceberg emerges, never too early or too late. Someone's outside laughing. I think that went well. Also, I think it's good luck. A bird, as you were reading, Lorraine, a bird hit my window, but it didn't get hurt or die or anything. It just like glanced it. So I think that was a good omen. Out and out. Tuesday, we went on incidentally. They told me who they were. I was tossed into the air. It worked to my advantage. They knew my story, the one that you made up. I'm going to buy a tackle box, though in a dream, I've never seen a fish. A coil, strung bulbs, standing planks for walls, lenses on a swivel, plastic trays stacked, 2 caps, burns, white blue makes day illusion. Sucking at the air, it's their last day here. They don't want to leave or sit in silence to release constraints, waves between statements. Jack, in his perfect weather spot, tells Larry, straighten your ass up. Nita hates delphinium because it needs a crutch. All those songs about wearing out your shoes. Wish we were on horseback. Rhododendrons, scarlet runners, the Bickersons, the local humbirds, Jack calls them, dive by, a light on the clothesline. He goes, oh, smiling. Sidestepping through wrought iron to hidden garden makes other, better parts appear. Catalpa, tall, dark, and handsome. I step on plums. 2 warblers root. A 3rd periscopes midway up an early dogwood. And how, a gold voice in my ear, once imagined, overcast noon and heat of late Augusto. Arise, she said. Ah, it was some time something said, delirium, relief, leaf in hand, and then, aha, Orpheus says, and the mocking birds go around, not fucking with some new design to get to another, no right spot, a 1-horse trail with a canopy, fruit landing, by the sound of it in the bushes. Thanks so much, everybody.
So I guess we're just gonna read some of our collaborations, right?
True, that's true, yeah.
Yes.
So you're gonna
I
kick us
almost
off,
forgot.
right? Yeah.
That
Yeah,
was
I almost
really
did.
nice, Paul. I like
blacked out.
hearing,
blacked out for a
even though
second.
I've read your book many times, I heard new lines for me. So Paul and I have been writing poems together. We hope to put a book together one day that we're going to call The Lazies. Should we just jump in?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the first poem is called Giacometti. Take these sticks. They have no life in them. You've been leaning like a building, waiting on a bedtime story. Flies buzz around the obelisk, decaffeinated as they all are. But you need some stimulation, a good kick in the panoply. When the words shower down, remember, we've all been dumb animals. Now get into your lab coat and slip under the door. Oh, should we mention how, sorry to interrupt, should we mention how we write these or how?
Go ahead, yeah.
So we would just write these over text trading lines. So I think we're going to read a few poems like that, but anyway, sorry,
Yeah.
I am to go ahead.
No. Yeah, we text message each other with each line, and then I think that's pretty much the only way we did this. And then we went and edited them together, and and some of them we like to jump off from a title, like using artist names or thinking about artists or poets, and this one is Clay, like Paul Clay. This is where I stay, along the dome. The less I do, the more I live, said the kid with the marbles. He rolls them around in his mouth. Alligators are beneath us, with slick back hair. This love is warped, dissolving by the afternoon. I grow weary like any other creature. I am clumsy, so what? Lie down on the side of the road. Look up at that tightrope. If I go up there, it'll be exactly like being down here.
So this one, oh, you do the title, Paul.
Okay, yeah. Just do something.
Hold the gravy,
Tell the baby.
free the prisoners,
Return the scissors.
bring the myths,
Rock the skiff.
loose the dogs,
Feed the cogs.
advise the foreman,
Leave the Norman.
give the gas,
Drop the sass.
pick the apples,
Cheat the raffles.
watch the dope,
Zap the Pope.
ditch the corset,
Mind the doorstep.
scream the sneeze,
Seize the fleas.
mend the book,
Have the luck.
make the shape,
Eat the crepe.
pass the salt,
Kiss the walt.
have the way,
But whatever you do, the living room. Another way to admire ourselves. Anticipate some usual magic like blind listening. That makes sense if you stare up into the sky all afternoon. Yet here we are now among the widow's cold cuts, contemplating mortality again. Take something away, you react because you're used to it. The deity puckers up.
Underground Sunday after Warhol.
I made it up for money because it enhances my joy. I open this can. Chronology is false. What if there is no end to bananas, oranges, cherries? Must I be happy every day and drawn to certain objects?
The faces are impassive as you flail in the surf. Angels make their gestures behind your back. It's a nice life as long as you're living dessert to dessert. The interminable party has an organizing motif. You see it on the hats. The largest of greatnesses is the smallest thing. The prognosis. The repetition seems normal, healthy, like leaves I was just reading at the bottom of your cup. The vowels are sad, holding down the American conversations, like the last word, an uncut stone in your lovely mind. All nostalgia for when you were sharper, but maybe you never were.
It sounded sad how you read that last one.
Because it is sad.
It's hilarious because you said that and it made me crack up.
I know, and I'm still sad about it.
Okay, this title is Too Nice.
I can't close the door without locking it up to the general public. Get the big key from the janitor in from waxing the furniture. He's tired of your fingerprints. He mopes around the corridors after hours in his physiognomy and hat.
The people need more people to bump into. It's an accidental night. Any kind of contact will do. Just to clear the air, I bring my fog machine and party favors. The world in miniature obliterates consideration. The lunatic threw away his keyring. Too nice. The janitor was the lunatic. White asparagus. No bones. Manet's way was precise, from life, like wishes. They're so nice. Sorry, I'm going to start this over. No bones. Manet's way was precise, from life, like wishes. They're so nice, they're nothing, like replicas. Very fine, dry lines, no other way around, but in the cylinder, it says, keep going. On the last leg, you can rest. So long, Green Street. Accommodating pastness with sticks.
So we also wrote a bunch of haikus together. And then so we'll end with our nutty haikus. Where did I put the overture of the tree trunk? Bark, 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 bark.
These are real haikus. So that was a fiver. Your hoity-toity underwear made of pasta. Yes, yes, fusilli.
Late at night I rise, inconsolably weeping. No, I said sweeping.
Can you believe it? The Capistrano swallows stole my little book.
I got these sneakers from a peddler on a dune. Great, sand everywhere.
Well, go on, rock it. You know, God damn it.
For a while.
Well, go on, rock it. If you know what's good for you, wear that Macintosh.
The chiropractor says big wheels keep on turning into the future.
Am I an old maid? Is shrimp? Am I an old maid? Is shrimp cocktail fulfilling? You gonna eat that?
The bull is lonely. It's his horn situation. The moon shines on him.
I'm on the toilet, dreaming of Casablanca, my head hanging down.
You did it. On the ship of fools, I address the smallest one. Him name is my name.
Push me overboard. I'm not afraid of that place. Waves between laughter.
We got through it.
Again, it's a challenge to read those and not laugh. Thanks so much for coming to our reading, everybody. And Anselm for hosting. I think Anselm is going to return and ask us some things or talk to us.
Hey, thank you, Paul. And thank you, Lorraine. I think the pasta underwear haiku might have done Stewart in.
I'm glad we did somebody in. That's our goal.
Well,
yeah, terribleness is just right for those.
If head shaking laughter is any positive sign, then you got some. Well, since you mentioned at the outset that at least a good amount of the collaborations happen by texting, that takes away my question of how do they happen. But I imagine the haiku, are you texting syllable by syllable?
No.
I mean, I didn't think you would be. I just wanted to throw that one out there.
That would be fun. But we would do line by line, but sometimes if you were continually getting a 5, we'd change the order, fuck it up a little bit.
Right. I think we tried to do that so you weren't always having to produce the punchline, which is hard after a while.
And I think we did some loons or like 3-word, 5-word, 3-word poems, but I don't know where those went.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm thinking when Anselm mentioned syllables about how Paul there were a few words that you got confused about how many syllables they were.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't.
Do you I realize, do you live near each other? Do you see each other very often?
No, when I was living in Portland, I would take a lot of trips to Oakland, to San Francisco, and so we saw each other a lot, and we would be hanging around with Aaron Simon, and the three of us also collaborated a lot too. But now I'm in Los Angeles, and we still visit now and then. But
I feel like
sorry.
that what was nice about collaborating over text is it started to feel like a kind of conversation. Like we would talk about each other's lives too, but it's almost like we didn't really need to, like we were having some other conversation.
Yeah.
And it's also, you know, every poet sitting here and elsewhere in the world knows like how hard it is just to kind of keep plugging away, never knowing what's going to happen to your words. And to know like you're immediately getting a reaction from somebody. Like that's, I guess, what I meant by feeling like Paul was my only reader. Like it was so motivating and nice, like someone's going to read this and react to it, and we're working on something together, you know. I mean, these are all truisms about collaboration. I'm not saying anything new, but
Yeah, well, the other thing is we would often say that it was like we're sharing a brain, and the poems that we were making, we were saying this at the time, it was so fun to do, and we were so kind of like free. The feeling was really free. We could just put down whatever we wanted because the object was like just surprise or laughter. And so it became like, I don't know, like a really cool teaching moment in a way. Like that collaboration was reminding me of how to write poetry.
totally.
And it kind of sucked for a while because everything that we would write I liked a lot, and then everything I wrote on my own I fucking hated. So we were the best poet between the
Yeah,
two of us.
right. That's what you used to say. You're like, we're a really good poet.
Yeah.
But I also feel like I learned something about writing a line without, like I was, you know, when you're writing for another person, you're sort of trying to set up for multiple reactions, you know, whereas sometimes I think when we write alone, it's like you're writing a line because you know it's going to go next and you know what's going to go next. And so I feel like I learned how to like write a more open line for myself, if that makes sense. Like I don't know what's going to happen, and there are multiple ways to follow this. If that, I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes sense. I mean, one of the things I'm curious about is this sort of like if you're writing in person together, there are things you can do based on seeing the page, because maybe you're writing into some version of what the form is going to ultimately end up being, right? But you can also kind of set up things the way that you're talking to, that in a way that I would imagine you can't quite do on texts, because you can't sort of write a line and a half and say start, and then have the person pick up off the second line, right? You're really trading articulations, or I imagine it to be there. So then I'm interested in just sort of what the editing process is like off of that, and then whether you find yourselves you know, it's this question of also then working with each other's cadence, but you're not actually speaking the lines. So they're, I mean, these are the kinds of things that I get fascinated by. So if any of that's interesting, please take it.
Yeah. Like Larry Fagan was both of our teacher, and he would always, I mean, often like this idea of reversals or inversions would come up. And so both of us kind of picked that up, and we would, when editing, we could feel free to just change something to its opposite meaning or whatever like that. Change order of lines or reverse them to, that gave us some freedom, I think.
But I also remember sometimes we would make corrections as we were going, you know, like we would be in the middle of texting and then Paul would be like, wait, and then he would switch everything around, and then it would be like, oh yeah, this is even better. But we also, I mean, the reading was a good excuse to do a little editing, like, I don't know, a couple nights ago. And we did have some constraints. Like there, one time I think I said, let's do a line of only 2 words. And it just was really kind of awkward and clunky once it was done. So then we just kind of moved it around to make different lines, and then it worked, I think. So, but I think, yeah, having that same, well, the experience of working with Larry Fagan was that you got, you know, like his editing style was intrusive. And so you just get used to sort of letting go. And so I think that Paul and I were both on that. We both had that experience and we had that frame of reference. It didn't, you know, I kind of feel like even though it was, I feel deeply emotionally important to me, like what was on the screen wasn't important. We both knew that.
Yeah.
Like, who cares?
That's like one of the most important things about that way of teaching, I guess. But yeah, I think to the rhythm, I think you said, Anselm, to that question, I think rearranging the poems relative to a new form or the form was helpful, and that changed the rhythm. Like I think there was a 2-word line poem and we made it into a prose poem or something like that.
Yeah.
That was interesting, like changing something from a verse to a prose poem. It seemed to work on like multiple occasions.
Yeah, which we didn't even intend.
Yeah, but I
And
think
I
the
think-
idea too was like not editing on the fly. That helped us more than, those cases where I would start rearranging stuff.
But we also like, I'm thinking now about this this prose epic that we were going to write about a caveman. Remember that? And I think having that kind of intention didn't work. Like it sort of fizzled.
Yeah,
So it was better just to start and be like, we don't know where this is going, and who cares if it sucks.
Yeah, that's William Carlos Williams's fault.
Which the epic about a caveman?
No, just no ideas. No
Oh.
ideas and things.
Leslie Scalapino and Kevin Killian wrote a play together, like a book, and that was published as a book. I think it's called Stone Marmalade. And they would sort of mail each other the different acts that they were writing, and so they would do things like introduce characters. And I asked Kevin once what it was like to work with Leslie that way, and he said, well, I introduced Julia Roberts as a character. This was 1995. I introduced Julia Roberts as a character, and Leslie called me up and said, I have no idea who Julia Roberts is. And then Kevin said, oh, okay, well, she's this actor and she's the big Hollywood star right now. And so Leslie then apparently went and rented every single movie that Julia Roberts had ever been in, watched them, and then wrote the character.
Man, she's thorough.
Well, yeah, which is a kind of digressive way of moving over to the question of using artists as this sort of impetus for some of the collaborations. Are you sort of using a sense of a person you're both interested in as a way to start, or is it something more idiosyncratic even in that?
It seems like that's pretty much, I don't know, that seems idiosyncratic enough, this sense of Giacometti. Like I was looking at that James Lord biography a lot at the time, and then we were both looking at Paul Klee reproductions, and yeah, just getting this sense, starting with that tone. So slipping through the door or whatever, what was it, Lorraine? Slipping through the
Slipping under the door.
Yeah, slip under the door.
Yeah, slip under the, well, that came from a story I told you about my daughter.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
But also only a small, thin Giacometti ridiculous figurine would fit.
Go under the door. That's true.
And then the Paul Klee, there is the tightrope walker drawing.
Yeah, it was nice to have, well, I do want to say, I feel like I'm realizing now, there are other conversations happening too, where it's like, we're sending each other pictures if we go to museums without each other. When we see each other, we definitely go see art together. That's like one of our favorite activities, I think. And then, Paul will be like, I'm reading this book, like the Giacometti book by, what was his name? James Lord?
Yeah.
But of course I can't remember the guy's name. Anyway, so it's sort of like we're like a 2-person book club sometimes too. So it's like we're kind of thinking about the same subjects at the same time. But it's nice to have that like just very kind of skeletal armature, of thinking. I liked writing those poems because it's like you could go off and do whatever dumb thing you were thinking about, but then you had to bring it back somehow occasionally to the artist, and I feel like it made things interesting.
How long have you two been collaborating?
I think from like 2016, I think, is when we
15?
got attached. Yeah, I mean, I think we were writing together before we even met in person. Yeah, maybe it was 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and I think you both referred to this early on in the conversation, but we're talking about collaboration as an ongoing and extended major aspect of both of your practices that then is in conversation with what you're doing separately. And I think that kind of way, like collaboration is really a different kind of experience for a lot of people. Like my mother likes to say she hates collaborating, although she used to do it a lot. And I sort of know what she means, but she's also slightly lying when she says that. But also what she means is it's something occasional. It's not something that was ever kind of built into a kind of regularity within her work. And but I don't think this sort of ongoing sense of collaboration as part of a practice is actually talked about a whole lot when collaboration is talked about, because you're usually dealing with the result, right?
Yeah.
And the titles thing is interesting to me about sending titles, because I mean, I remember reading that my father and Ron Padgett would send each other titles. But my father complained that he would always send Ron terrific titles that would allow him to write amazing, fantastic poems. And Ron would just send him titles like in 3 parts, you know, to purposefully make it as hard as possible in terms of subject matter or something to begin with. But you must have a lot of material.
Yeah, I think we have.
It's daunting.
Yeah. But I think what you're saying is really interesting about like continuing I don't know, that there being some continuity. But it's not really with, it wouldn't be in our case, for me, it wouldn't be like continuity with Lorraine's collaborative lines or anything like that. It's more continuity with just the process or something else, something that, you know, is sort of unnameable.
Yeah.
It's like someone had said, bathing in the poem. I don't remember. Do you remember whose line that is, Anselm? It's like,
I think it's actually a line that Ted Berrigan stole from somebody else.
yeah. Well, like that somehow intuitively, I really understood that after a while, and like collaboration will get you out of your own way and kind of keep you out of your own way. And so I always like to try to have one cooking all the time.
Ryan is posting that it's Rimbaud, and then I'm remembering it. Rimbaud's the source, and then that line shows up all over the sonnets.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm switching rooms, and we'll maybe call it a reading in just a minute. This is called apartment hosting.
There he is, Rimbaud.
Right. Oh yeah. That's Rimbaud, and that's the author of the sonnets.
That's funny how that just happened.
Thanks so much for reading, and congratulations on the new books, and thank you for sharing your time with us and talking about and getting to hear the collaborations and talking about them has been really terrific as well. And is there anything else you want to add, so you have the last word instead of me babbling?
I don't think so. Yeah, thank you so much for having us. This has been so much fun.
Yeah, total honor, Anselm. Thank you.
My pleasure. And now we'll do what we do at the end of these, which is unmute everybody to say hello and goodbye and head off into the rest of temporality.
Thank you.
Thank you both for coming, everybody.
That was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great conversation.
Thank you. Great job.
Great
Paul.
reading. Thank you so much.
That was so great.
Feel super
Hi, thank
nature.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anselm.
Thank you.
See you guys next
Bye.
Wednesday. Thank you. Have a great afternoon, you guys.